gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, it's time for some fun. How do you feel about fingers? Hey, stop looking at your hand. I'm not talking about those fingers. I'm talking about these fingers. Fingers that you can use as a full-on weapon to smite your foes down into hell. That's right, the ringed finger hammer. This has always been one of my favorite weapons in Elden Ring. After all, it's just hilarious. A single finger from the hand spider enemies that you swing around as a hammer because you put a frickin' shaft on it that you can hold. And of course, its unique skill is fun too, where it expands the finger itself to a massive size and then flicks forward, but up until this point, the weapon has simply just not been strong enough on its own to justify a full-on build just for giving the finger to your enemies. But patch 1.07 changed all of this just enough to make this properly viable and actually pretty good in the right situations. So with that said, just what can this thing do? Well, in PvE, it's quite simple. You flick the hell out of your opponent until they bend down on one knee and wait for you to stab them in the face, because that's one of the major changes given to this weapon in the patch. Its stagger damage has been notably increased, as well as its regular damage, which is part of what makes it good, but the stagger damage has been moved to the point where even bosses can only take 2 or 3 uses of the weapon skill to knock them into their first poise break, ready for you to let loose and crit them for a massive chunk of their health. In PvP though, this thing has actually gotten a super notable change too. Before this patch, it was pretty much impossible to hit actual people with the weapon skill of the finger hammer, simply because of how slow and obvious it is, as well as being pretty short range. Once you hit the button, the weapon starts slowly growing and then unleashed a flick a good couple of seconds later, and so any opponent that you'd come across would just sort of notice the animation start and then get out of the range, as the range on it is pretty short considering how long it takes to launch off. The change to this in patch 1.07 that actually makes it usable in PvP though is an additional hit registration at the startup of the animation. In fact, this actually does a slight stagger to smaller enemies, and the result of this is actually they cannot even roll out of the way if you manage to hit that close range stagger at the very start of the animation. This means if you hit that stagger at the beginning, you are all but guaranteed to hit the full flick. In case you're wondering, this works wonders in the new Colosseum modes as well. In duels, it's basically the same as anywhere else that you did PvP before, and in team battles, it is sort of funny. If people try to group up on you for whatever reason, you can even get a multi-hit with the flick and just lay out multiple people on the floor with one attack. The way it has changed just made this an easy thing to pull off compared to its previous state, and, well, it's finger flickin' good.
Is that a reference I should get, or—
Seriously?
That said, of course the finger itself is a relatively unbuffable weapon, specifically the skill at least. It is purely physical damage, it isn't a charged ability, and it doesn't do anything funky with multiple hits or anything like that, and so the actual modifiers that you can stack onto it to up the damage are pretty limited. With that said, what have we done to the build this time around to make it entirely worth using a build that is mainly based around the finger hammer? Well, of course, to start off, there's the hammer itself, and this one comes from quite the unusual location if you don't have it yet. First up, head to the Gelmir Hero's Grave dungeon located all the way at the top of Mount Gelmir. Then from the site of Grace, you want to head down, being careful of the chariot traps of course, and instead of turning off of the area when the floor stops, just run through the lava in front of you. Make sure you bring lots of healing flasks as you'll have to tank the lava damage the whole way down, but once you reach the bottom of this ramp, take a left turn, and in the little alcove in front of you there will be a chest, and inside of that chest is the weapon that we're after. Then we have our secondary weapon, the Misericorde. This is a wicked dagger that has the highest crit rating in the game, meaning when you hit a crit with this weapon, it will do more damage than any other weapon in the game will. To get this for yourself, head to the Rampart Tower, Site of Grace in Stormvale Castle, run out of the door in front of you, and jump off the ledge to land on the roof that's in front. From there, drop down to the alley on your right and turn around to find a door locked by an imp seal statue. Open it up, and in this area you will find the Misericorde waiting to be picked up on a corpse. In order to make this properly fit in the build we have today, we'll be setting it to heavy scaling so it scales well with strength, as we are pumping up strength to buff up our finger hammers in general. And then we'll be setting the Ash of War on this dagger to be Royal Knight's Resolve, which boosts the damage of your next hit with that weapon by 80%, and you get this from the hidden area of Volcano Manor. Once you get to the actual manor building itself again by wrapping around through the lake of lava, you'll find a room with an egg-headed lizard man in the back. Instead of going up to him, just head up to the top of the staircase here, and you'll find another imp seal statue. Open it up, walk through, and carefully parkour your way down by way of these hanging cages. Once you reach the bottom, head to the northeast side of the room to find this Ash of War sitting on a corpse. As well, we'll be casting a couple of incantations within this build, so we will need ourselves a seal, for which we'll use the Clawmark seal as it scales with strength, which is our main stat. And you get this one from the Bestial Sanctum in Caelid by trading Deathroot with Garank. As for your armor, that is pretty much totally up to you, but I recommend going for the absolute highest poise that you can possibly reach. This weapon skill doesn't cost much FP to cast, and we don't have many sources of FP spending within the build as a whole either, so one of our main important stats stats is endurance to give us loads of stamina, but this also allows you to wear a fairly heavy armor set. Higher poise means you can withstand more attacks and still get your own attacks off. It just lets you trade better with everything from players to bosses. With that, let's talk about our talismans. First up, of course, is the Shard of Alexander. This boosts your weapon skill damage by 15%, and then includes the finger flick from our finger hammer, so this is great for obvious reasons. If you don't know how to get this talisman at this point, I'd be surprised, but just in case, it is from a 3-step questline. The first step is to head to the desert where you fight Radon, and then you'll find Alexander there. Talk to him and he will move to his next location, which is in the lava fields west of the Seedwater Terminus site of Grace on Mount Gelmir. Again, find him and talk to him here. Then finally he'll move by the Dragon Temple Lift site of Grace in Crumbling Fair, Missoula, where you'll encounter him one last time, at the end of which you will get this talisman. Secondly, we've got the Dagger Talisman. This increases the damage of critical hits by 17%. Stack that on top of the Misericorde, already having a particularly high crit modifier, and also the Royal Knight's Resolve buff, and you can crit for nearly 5,000 on some targets with both hits combined, which is obviously quite nasty for a free hit. To get this one for yourself, head to that same area where you found Royal Knight's Resolve, but instead of doing the parkour down the cages, turn right immediately when you enter through the room and drop carefully to the wooden floor one stage down. Then follow the path that is here through to its endpoint to get the talisman sitting on a corpse. Thirdly, we'll be using the Bullgoat's Talisman. This reduces incoming poise damage by 25%, and so it just lets you trade damage better with your enemies as a result, as it is percentage-based effect. It works exceptionally well on a build like this. We are already going for particularly heavy armor anyways. To get this, head to the Dragon Barrow Cave in Caelid, and then just run to the back wall where it will be waiting for you. Then finally, for talismans, we have two options. Either the Dragon Crest Great Shield, which raises all physical damage negation by 20%, or the Aired Tree's Favor +2 talisman, which gives you a notable boost to health, stamina, and equip load. Which of these you use is up to you, and you can actually run both of them without using the Bullgoat's Talisman, depending on the encounter that you're doing, as sometimes the extra poise won't necessarily make the difference in whether you flinch or not. In any case, both of these talismans are excellent general use options. As for your Flask of Wondrous Physic, there isn't any option here that will directly impact our damage. However, given that we have built ourselves around crits, I recommend using the stance breaking power of the Stone Barbed Crystal tier within here. This only lasts for 30 seconds, but increases poise damage by 30% for that duration. To get this one for yourself, you have to defeat the boss located at the Minor Aired Tree in the northeast of Caelid. As for your other slot, that is entirely utility and thus personal choice. Use it for healing yourself, for magical damage resistance, or anything that you really feel like, honestly. After that, we have our Incantations, and of course we have the usual suspects here.
You two again!
Which would be Golden Vow, which is a 15% damage buff and 10% damage negation for 90 seconds after casting. This can be found in the Corpse Tent Shack on the eastern side of Mount Gelmir, and of course Flame Grant Me Strength, which is a 20% buff to physical and fire damage for 30 seconds after casting. And this one is located at Fort Gale on the western side of Caelid, hidden behind the fort itself between a couple of flamethrower wagons. With that, we actually have one more that I recommend for this build, and that is Bestial Sling. This is a super quick, decent range, alright damage incantation, and the main reason that we have this is for PvP, as the finger flick is cool and much more reliable in PvP these days, but even if you hit a full finger flick, it won't always kill your opponent in one go, and if you hit them with it once, they will definitely be far more wary of the lockdown of the animation afterwards, which is where this incantation comes in handy to just chip down the rest of their health afterwards. To get this, simply keep giving more Deathroot to Geraint in the Bestial Sanctum, the same way that you got the seal. The damage of this incantation is also buffed by using said seal, so there's a nice extra bit of synergy there, and as well, if you want to, you can actually use any of the other beast incantations too in this build for that exact same reason. That's it then for the actual equipment and the usable functionality of this build, but what are the attributes that make it all come together? Well, first up, you want to get to 80 strength, as that is what the finger hammer scales with, then get a nice amount of vigor. 40 is doable enough, but 60 is definitely more comfortable. After that, get to 25 faith so you can use all of our incantations, and then get to 12 mind. This is just enough to cast our weapon skill 6 times before drinking a flask, which is honestly more than enough. With that, put all of your remaining points into endurance, as this both gives you more stamina, which will actually let you chain cast the flick a bit better, as it does use quite a bit of stamina to do, and will also raise your equip load so you can use even better armor as a result. And that's everything. I hope you've all enjoyed this. I've always loved the finger hammer weapon, and now thanks to the changes of patch 1.07, it's actually decent enough to recommend a full build around. It can kill pretty much anything that you want it to, and it's even usable in PvP now, finally, which is pretty fun too. Imagine you get in a duel to the death with your enemy, and they say they'll defeat you with nothing but a single finger. That is exactly what this is for. Let us know if there are any other interesting or unique weapons that you'd like to see us make a full build for, like if you like like the video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.